Turn the dial, turn it loud. Miami's pride, make us proud. CanesWear crew, you hear the crowd. Hurricanes ain't backing down. Every play, every score. Raising bets and raising roar. Rocking orange, green galore. All for one and one for four. We got FTSN, taking names, win it again. Podcast fam, till the end. Tune in, now let's begin.
Yo, what's going on, Canes fans? All my viewers and listeners tuned in. You're in with another CanesWear Live podcast only on FTSN. We are with my right-hand man, one of my best friends, Bo. He did not go to the football game with me this past weekend, but he will be attending this upcoming one against Virginia Tech, which we will talk about later on. But, man, another big-time football game for our Miami Hurricanes. We are now 4-0. Going into ACC play, which, as y'all know, is the most important when it comes to this football season. We'll talk a little bit about that later. But if you didn't catch my last recent live when we were at the game at Raymond James Stadium, please make sure you go back, you watch that, you hit the like and subscribe button. We were able to interview Wesley Basaint's mom and sister. We were able to interview Jose Borregales, kicker for Miami the past few years before his brother ended up taking over along with his dad. Had some great fan interaction, so make sure you check that out. But, man, going back to this USF football game, Bo, man, I know we got a lot of viewers and listeners tuned in. If you do want to hop on to the show and kind of give us your take about the football game or a question about the football game or this next one, please feel free to hit the link in the comments and jump on with us. This is going to be a fan interaction podcast, so as long as you want to jump in and ask a question, feel free to do so in that bottom link in the comments like we just put right there for you. But, Bo, going to this South Florida game, right, there was a lot of hype about this South Florida team packing out an NFL-type stadium. They extended the third deck for this football game. They sold out their student tickets. And the head coach for South Florida, where some Florida fans in our backyard here in Gainesville think he could be a really good candidate for the next Florida football job, which, we'll talk about that in another podcast. But going into this game, this was a team that felt like they had a lot of confidence, even though they lost to a team like Alabama. But what were some of your takeaways, first and foremost, from the South Florida game this past weekend?
Oh, man. Well, one, I had a chance to go to the game, but I decided to hold back and save my energy for BT next weekend. So I can't wait to see all y'all there. But, man, honestly, my main takeaway is Cam Ward is just that guy, bro. Cam Ward is that guy. And it's crazy. The first half, it was we weren't playing our best football, but back in the day I would have been like, oh shit, here we go again. But for some reason watching that game, bro, I was never worried. Like the entire time, I was never worried because I knew we had one. I was just like, it's just a matter of time. And another thing I was saying our last podcast that I wanted to see more from the run game.
Yep. And
I didn't see as much as I wanted to, but I also didn't mind because I trust when the ball is in Ward's hand. Like, I don't care if he throws the ball 40 times a game. Yes. Before I would have been against it, but I trust him so much with that ball. Like, it's just like, it is what it is,
No, you brought up a really good point about, wanting to see that run game, especially early. And we kind of brought this up, especially me in recent podcasts that we've had together, that Miami has kind of taken this approach, Shannon Dawson and Cam Ward, when you're able to have two guys that are very creative, not only before the play is snapped, but being able to alter and change things based off a defensive front, which Cam Ward has done, day in and day out so far through 4 games, is Miami kind of takes whatever the defense gives you, right? Like, I think so far this year throughout 4 games, as crazy as it sounds, as hyped up as Cam Ward is in this wide receiver room, every team that we have played against so far, their number one goal when they look at this roster is stopping the run. You've seen that against Florida. You saw it against Ball State. You see it against South Florida. I mean, South Florida stacked the box, especially in that first half, having one safety high, daring you to throw the football. And you saw very early, just like in Ball State, where we had very limited amount of rushes for a limited amount of rushing yards, but that was only because they were stacking the box. And when you have a guy like Cam Ward and some of these wide receivers that we'll get into a little bit later, man, I mean, you talked about it. It's nearly impossible to talk about the Miami Hurricanes football team without mentioning Cam Ward right off the bat, right? This is a guy that has transferred 2 different times already, kind of put, a lot of leverage on himself to say, you know what, I don't want to be projected as a 2nd or 3rd round pick, which I could have been this past year. I'm going to invest in myself. I'm going to transfer to the University of Miami, and I'm going to put everything on myself and for this university to turn things around and be a 1st round draft pick. Shout out my boy Jonathan Campo. He was in the live video with me, gave me and my girlfriend a ride to the stadium, man. He was a great host, man, great supporter and great fan, man. That's my boy right there, Jonathan Campo, man. I hope you're doing well, my guy, man. Thank you for tuning in and showing some love. But yeah, bro, the thing with Cam Ward is this, right? I think there was definitely some times where you saw the pocket collapse a little bit. Again, we didn't bring up the fact that this was yet another game where you didn't have Jalen Rivers, you didn't have Rodriguez, so you had at least 1 to 2 starting offensive linemen that should have contributed to this offense that you were expecting this football game to, and they didn't even touch the field, and we still did what we did, right? But all in all, I think the biggest thing that you saw with Cam Ward was this, bro. His pocket presence is unbelievable. Like every time you thought that he was about to get sacked, he wasn't even looking near the defensive end or the defensive tackle or the guy that was bringing pressure from the left or the right side. It was like he already felt where it was coming from, and he just was so elusive with this. I mean, I kind of tweeted it during the game. If you're playing NCAA, his pocket awareness has to be 100. Has to be. The dude is more slippery than a Diddy party. Like he is more slippery than a Diddy party right now. I mean,
you do about three Diddy references per podcast.
But seriously though, I mean, Cam Ward is that guy. I mean, through 4 football games, the dude is 2nd in the nation in passing yards, right? Mm-hmm. First and foremost behind Jackson Dart. He's a guy that has led this team to not only the offensive of play for Miami, but just the overall leadership, what he's done for this program on and off the football field. So I love what I see from that. I think we're going to have 305 Sports hop on with us here shortly too, and kind of give us his take and ask him a few questions about the football game. But going back to Cam Ward, bro, this was something that what's up, brother?
How's it going, guys? Brad, I'm feeling the shades, man. I love them.
I appreciate it.
Definitely. Yeah, man. Happy to be on, guys. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. So give me your overall takeaway of this USF game. Like, give me a player or two that really stood out for you, and then also through 4 games, what's a position group or somebody that's really kind of taken over the realm for you?
Okay, well, first of all, position group and quarterback. That's definitely the one thing I will say. Cam Ward is him. I mean, he's absolutely him. He is just a flat out beast. He's unbelievable. So I will say that 4 games. It's the only criticism I will have is the penalties. That's been a major key. It was great against Florida. The Canes were awesome, only having a penalty against Florida, but they've really had some issues the rest of the series. 11 penalties, even though I think the referees were a little too flag happy in the USF game. It was a little bit much, I will say in that realm. My take on the game, I didn't have such a gloomy aspect in the first half. One of the things that stood out to me is the fact that they're doing trick plays so early in the game. I felt like they couldn't hang with us on the field, so they had to try different things to make sure they could score points. And the fact they scored their only touchdown on trick play means that they knew that they couldn't score on Miami, and they held them to field goals. And I knew that we were going to score touchdowns. So I'll give them 3, but we're going to score 7. That's the way I felt even in the first half. So that's one thing I felt throughout the game. So I felt we'll be good. I wasn't surprised with the second half performance. I knew that Mario would get in their ear, and I knew the position coaches well, and I'm not surprised with what we saw. I didn't expect 50 points, though, man. That was just a full-blown shellacking of that team. That was great to see. The one thing I will say the announcer said that was pretty funny in that game is that their secondary is the strength of their team. I'm like, what are they watching? They're 122nd in the country at pass. So what team are they talking about there? So, yeah, so that's pretty much my take of the game.
Hey, nice to meet you. I'm Bo.
Hey, how's it going, man?
Quick question. I know before the season, I had a lot of high expectations for our run game. We were talking about it earlier. I don't think it's shaking out like I thought it would, but with Cam Ward back there, I'm not as worried. But what do you think about the run game, and what do you think we need to do to get these guys going? They're all talented as hell, but it's kind of hard to just sit there and hand the ball off when you know you have one behind center, you know?
No, yeah, I agree with you, Else. It's been a little bit of a surprise. You don't expect averaging 3.8 yards per carry against FAMU in the first half. They have picked it up in the second half because they have a tendency of wearing teams down. Sorry, guys, I'm like doing double duty here. I have my kid with me as well. Yeah, say hi, Liam. Say hello.
Hello.
What's up, man?
Future Kane, by the way, just letting you know.
I need to see his best Cam Selly impersonation right now. Cam Selly.
He can't do that right now, but he'll plaster you for you. Yeah, Liam, look. They want to see you do this. Liam, do this.
Let's see it.
Do this. Liam, come on, do it. Do it.
Let's do Cam Selly. Let's do it. Whoa! The Cam Selly. I love it.
Yeah, man. So yeah, he's pretty funny. He's already saying the U and he's flashing the U up and everything. You don't want a juice box? Yeah, make it a juice box. Yeah. So yeah, about that, yeah, 3.8. I do think that hopefully in ACC play they'll get more creative with their runs. Maybe run some more counter, some more outside as well. Having Jalen Rivers will be good for the team as well coming back. I think that's easily going to help. Run more towards the left side. Sadly, so I'm not worried about the running game, but I am a little surprised that they haven't dominated like they usually do or did last season.
You brought up a lot of good points earlier. One of the things that caught a lot of people off surprise, especially while we were watching the game at Raymond James Stadium, was Miami trailed for the first time in college football this season in the first quarter to South Florida, and that was something that I actually wanted to see, right? Because we've never been able to do what we were like battling through adversity, right? And I really loved, to your point, they had that first early touchdown in the first quarter. And ever since then, it was either a field goal or they were shut out in the second half, which we'll get into as far as the adjustments. But being able to battle adversity, trailing for the first time all season, and how you respond to that was very key for me, first and foremost. And then you brought up the red zone, right? The red zone on offense and defense on both sides of the field, whether it was USF getting into the red zone or us having to capitalize in the red zone. We were not just capitalizing in the red zone on offense. We were scoring touchdowns, not just settling field goals. And that was one of the big things that really haunted Miami in the past. And you brought up another good point with penalties. We had 11 penalties for 113 yards. But again, going back to adjustments and second half adjustments in particular, only 2 of those 11 penalties came in the second half. So along with the penalties settling down, the defense also settled down. We literally held that team on in that second half to 0 points in the third quarter, and we shut them out in every aspect possible. And we pretty much said, hey, if you want to throw the ball to number 38 Atkins all day, go ahead, but you're not going to beat us on the run game. And we sat there and got exactly what needed to be done. So I love the adjustments from Coach Guidry and some of the defense. I want to ask you this. Give me 1 or 2 players that stood out on defense for you that people aren't talking about so far through 4 games.
On defense, they're not talking about. They're talking about a lot of them. Man, it's a good question. I think Harris is one that sometimes gets overlooked. I think he's outplayed James Williams this year. Jaden Harris. He's one. Frederick's got a lot of attention. Let's see who else. Maybe Mish Powell a little bit. I know he's a transfer portal guy and he's a big transfer, but I haven't heard much of him since his pick against the Gators throughout on defense. So this game getting a pick for him, I thought was a good thing as well. So I would say maybe Harris, but the 2 safeties actually, Harris and Richards. The defensive backfield has gotten a lot of attention lately because it was expected to be a weak point in the team, and they've actually held their own. As far as coverage goes, I've been very proud to see that. Coach Rum told me in the gym, he said, when I told him that I was kind of worried about the cornerback position a little bit, especially on the slot side, he said, watch out for OJ Frederick and Ryan Mack. Don't be surprised if he gets some run this year as well. Those young men are ahead of the time.
I love it, man. St. Thomas Aquinas boys. I mean, all those guys are stepping up. I mean, I'm gonna have Bo ask you this next question when we bring up. He brought up the question about running backs, right? And when I think of running backs, people I talk to very close that are very familiar with NFL scouts, as great as Damian Martinez and Mark Fletcher are, NFL scouts say that the number one overall running back on this football team is Jordan Lyle. And you see each and every time he touches the football, the dude is electric. He creates big plays with every opportunity possible. Bo, go ahead and ask your next question.
So out of the running back group, I know we all had high hopes for Martinez. He hasn't shown what I think we all thought he was going to give us. But outside of him, I thought Mark Fletcher would be a guy, and also Chris Johnson. I would like to see him get a few more touches. Lyle has completely surprised me, to be honest. I didn't think I'd see much of him. I mean, I knew his name, but he's actually making a name for himself. So how do you think the running back room is shaping up now? Who would you like to see get a bulk of the carries and then thereafter?
Yeah, I think am I still muted?
No, you're
there we go. Sorry. There we go. Just want to make sure. Yeah. No, I think Martinez still, like I said, I do think now that we're getting ACC play, I do want to see some more creative runs. It's hard to tackle a guy that's like 230 pounds. It's not very easy. So that's one. But it's always going to be with Mario running back by committee. And depending on the situation, he's going to bring in Fletcher. He's going to bring Martinez. If he wants to change the pace back, he'll bring in AJ Allen. And I think if you want a back that can do pretty much anything, it is Jordan Lyle. Jordan Lyle has proven that he can be fast, but he's not easy to tackle either. Just ask the Florida Gators when they had to bring him down, a couple times in the game. And not only that, he could also catch passes. So I think the bulk of the carry should be Martinez, because he just happens to be the bigger back, that can wear teams down. But I just see the team still continuing to do running back by committee, even through ACC play.
Yeah, you brought up another good point, right? Because with the running backs, we were in this spot, not even just last year, but in years prior, especially going into ACC play or even before that, we kind of looked at this running back room and we felt like we were stacked. And yet there wasn't much production. We just looked at the names and the high school profiles and was like, you know what? We feel like we have a lot of guys to contribute. And within 3 or 4 games, guys got injured, and we saw how quickly our running back room devastated, right? Now we're at the point where everyone's healthy, everyone's contributing, and anytime someone touches the rock, they're doing something, right? You brought up Jordan Lyle along with myself. Bo brought up Damian Martinez, who's a patient runner, very similar to Le'Veon Bell, running back style, a guy that really kind of is patient behind the line of scrimmage, who kind of tiptoes, waits for that hole to open up and creases. He leads the team, I believe, with 3 touchdowns in the running back room right now. And even though he doesn't have the rushing yards, he's a guy that within 2 or 3 yards between him and Mark Fletcher, it's almost a guaranteed first down. And those are things in the past that Miami really haunted them year in and year out every single week. We didn't have the push on the offensive line. We didn't have the running back to get the extra yard and kind of carry the load, right? We have all those things working out for us. But even AJ Allen, right? He showed a little bit of dose this past game, and even before that with Ball State. He's a guy that it just seems like every time he gets the football, he makes the first guy miss every single time. And then on top of that, he drops his shoulder, he drops his head, and he is ready to lay the boom. He's got like this – I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan, unfortunately, and he's got like this Marion Barber type of running style to him where he almost to run people over, almost in a bad way. And he laid the wood on somebody against USF this past weekend, and I thought – concussion right off the bat. And I mean, what do you see about the physicality of AJ Allen, who's returning another year from Miami, who's kind of like that guy behind the scenes that people aren't talking about?
Yeah. Well, one of the complaints I've heard online when people talk about that AJ should get more reps is the fact that he's coming in garbage time. But if you remember last year, he was a very effective runner. The only weakness he had in his game was pass protection. That's why he wasn't out there as often as he could be. But I think he's changed his game a little bit. He looks a bit more physical. He looks bigger to me as well. And I think you will see him again when you're playing the Florida States, you're playing the Cows, because it's one thing to constantly get beat up by guys like Mark Fletcher and David Martinez. But when you get that change of pace back, then now you have to chase and attract me, and he's physical as well. It changes the dynamic of the team, and it makes it just another headache for a defensive coordinator.
No, don't talk, be quiet.
We talked about Cam Ward. We talked about the running backs. I want to transition over to these wide receivers. I think these guys have been doing a great job. You expect X to be X, so no surprise there. I had to text Brad, give him props because I did say something before the season about X compared to another receiver. I was obviously fucking wrong about that. But man, you got to see Isaiah Horton, who I fucking love. I love big receivers. He's finally like putting his size to use, his skill to use. Sam Brown is showing a little bit more. Even though it was just 2 catches, I feel like that playmaking ability that we thought he was going to bring, he's finally starting to bring that to us, where he can just take something and make it something. But which one of the wide receivers have surprised you this year?
None. Maybe Zay a little bit because he only had like one significant game last year, and that was the A&M game, the A&M game. But aside from that, really none. X is X. Jacoby George. What has surprised me about him is his patience. He's not thrown a punch this year, which is a good thing. So he's actually matured. So that's a pleasant surprise, I will say, about Jacoby George. Sam Brown, I expected him to have a 71-yard touchdown eventually, despite what some of the audience and fans were saying. I knew he was too good to not be as formidable as he was over at Houston as well. But I guess I would say Zay. I knew eventually what happened. I knew how much work he's been putting. I saw him at the spring game as well, and he balled out in the spring game as well. So I'm not surprised, but I'm happy. I'm pleasantly surprised and happy to see that he's doing it on the field and when the Bullets are firing live and game day.
Cane fans that are watching and tuned in, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button for us on the CanesWear Daily Podcast, only on FTSN. We would love to have your input. Any Cane fans that were either watching the game or at the game, if you want to come in and ask a question for me, Bo, or the audience, you're more than welcome to do so. But going back to this football game, right? We were talking about the wide receivers. Isaiah Horton, not only did he have a coming out party, but he had a career day, right, this past weekend with 108 yards and a touchdown. And he was a guy that we kind of knew going into this football season where he kind of needed to set his mark and kind of lay his imprint and foundation to be that guy for Miami, because he kind of gave something to this wide receiver room that not too many other guys did as far as from a measurable and physique standpoint. And we kind of knew when it came to the red zone, if we knew defense were going to collapse and really bite down on that running game, we needed a wide receiver to really be able to throw those fades. And he's a guy that's been able to show the last couple of weeks he could really do that. Not only him, though, Sam Brown, like y'all both mentioned before, he's a guy that when you talk to NFL scouts and guys that are familiar with his game, obviously Shannon Dawson and him already have familiarity at Houston. But one of the key things that a lot of people don't talk about behind the scenes with Sam Brown is this. He really is at his A game when he's already on the move when he gets the football. Yeah. You have to create motion for him. You have to be able to get reverses for him or to where he's already running before he catches the football, similar to how we used Jacoby George throughout this football season. And you saw that with that big play. And I love the way that, again, to your point, the big play that he made, he just needed that one spark to really get him that momentum and that mojo for him personally. And I think this is really going to create a good storm for him personally going on to the season in ACC play, which we all know is the most important thing for this football team, because as good as we have played the last 4 games, Cam Ward has said it, Mario Cristobal has said it, you talk to any other players on the team, the ACC is all that matters. 1-0 every single weekend, but when it comes to the ACC, there's objectives on this bulletin board, and the first one on there is to be ACC champions. And the way to do that is by taking care of your opponents in the ACC play. We got our first one in against Virginia Tech, which we'll talk about starting tomorrow on CanesWear Live as well. But going back to this football game, we talked about the offensive side of the football. Let's talk about the defense. This was the team that when you saw in the first half, the up-tempo really gave them a little bit of fits, right? There was a few times, especially in the first couple drives, where you saw the momentum of South Florida, especially with the quarterback that was a little bit mobile. Once he got to that second level, there were some times where it kind of got Kiko on some skates, right? Even though he led the team in tackles, there were still opportunities there where you kind of said, hey, man, if there was a quarterback on the other side of the football that maybe was a little bit consistent accuracy and still had the legs that this guy has, you may be able to create some problems for Miami's defense, very similar to how Cam Ward does on the offensive side of the football. Give me your take overall on defense of what you saw this past weekend.
Well, I thought the defense adjusted well. I mean, it's tough to adjust to that kind of tempo, and South Florida does have some talent. They also have some guys that we recruited as well as other schools, so let's not forget that. But I thought on defense they adjusted very well, especially in the second half. I mean, they were tired in the second quarter. You could tell, like our guys usually don't cramp up like that, and Barrow going down and Tyler Barron going down. That was kind of scary at the beginning, but it was they good as it was just a cramp. But our team did adjust. Like I said, they kept them between the like, and you just said as well, Brad, and you both. We kept them between the 20s. They only settled for field goals in the first half, and in the second half, we adjusted the game plan, brought in a little bit more pressure to Byron Brown, and the defense, stood up to the challenge and shut him out in the second half. So again, I was impressed. This is the only up-tempo team that we're going to face this season, and it was a good test for Miami, which means they could adjust to any kind of offense and come out victorious and still be dominant.
Mm.
So, the defense did take a while to get their feet up under them. Like you said, that tempo was crazy. I don't even know if Tennessee run their tempo that fast. It was crazy as hell watching that. But what impressed you about the defense of secondary defensive line, and what more do you want to see from the guys back there?
Our defensive line is scary. All right, scary. Doesn't matter who you put in there; they're going to make an impact. They're just scary, and that's the strength of the team. The front four is scary. Our linebacking core is really good. I love Popo. Popo, I know his dad personally. Popo Aguirre, I think he's going to be the future leading linebacker of this team once he goes into the NFL. He played very well. He assisted in some of those tackles. Yeah, he assisted very well. Sorry, my son wants to watch Iron Man now. The back and forth a little bit there. So, and then our secondary, again, they played well. Listen, Sean Atkins was the only one that really did anything for USF. If you look at the rest of the receivers, they're pretty much shut down. The only one that kind of killed us was Sean Atkins. So I thought the secondary held their own as well, especially without Damari Brown being in the game, playing this week either.
Listen, we've had some guys banged up throughout 4 games, and we have not lost a step. You brought up, Damari Brown being missed, but talking about the defense, right? Shout out to Brett, owner of CanesWear, tuned in. That's our guy, the main man, main boss. Shout out to Brett as well for tuned in. But, I want to throw out some crazy stats to y'all, right? I talked a little about the offensive side of the football, but let's talk about this defense side of the football. We are tied for number 1 in the country in interceptions, right? We talked about before this season that the weak point possibly for this defense was the secondary, and yet we are tied for number 1 in the country and interceptions. Well, guess what? We're also a top 10 defense overall in the nation. We are number 10 overall in defense currently, along with the number 6 overall rushing defense. So we talk about the adjustments we make in the second half, and some of these teams that we're going up against, we know what their strengths are, and we are able to shut those guys down to create them to be one-dimensional. And you can see that every opponent we have faced, they don't know how to be multi-dimensional. They rely on one thing and one thing only, and once we shut it, it's over. And then, this is the biggest key in all this. You brought up the defensive line, and so does every other Miami Hurricane fan before the season started and going into every week. Craziest stat out of all these. We are tied for number 1 in the nation in sacks, and Ruben Bain has played 2 more snaps than us. Ruben Bain, the number 1 defensive line, not only on this football team, but one of the most important players in the country that every team has circled before they even snapped against Miami, has only played 2 more snaps than us, and we are tied for first in the nation in sacks. That is crazy. That's production. That is depth. That is quality guys, and that is proven development for this football team.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. And yes, the absence of Ruben Bain has been noticed, but Tyler Barron has been awesome. Alston has been awesome, and the defensive line, the interiors, also brought pressure as well. So that's something that has been absolutely phenomenal. So the depth and the development that Mario and Jason Taylor and Joseph LeVay have brought to this team has been awesome. Competing with the likes of Alabama, Georgia as well, teams that normally are good for having such solid defenses and good front fours. To Miami being number 1 in sacks just says that we're almost there to play ready for the big boys.
We're getting there.
We are getting there. Again, we are 4 games into the football season. We don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but at the same time, you talk about the projection of this football team, and it's very hard to not talk about the projection of this football team without mentioning Cam Ward, right? And I want to talk a little bit about his personal projection. This is a guy that is projected to break every single record at quarterback for the University of Miami. My producer is going to bring up a edit here shortly. Shout out to my guy, Canes Chief, who created this edit. But just, going through 4 games so far, he is on pace to break the single season passing record, that was once led in 1984. He is on pace to surpass that with 4,300 passing yards, right? Then you talk about the single season touchdown record. Shout out to my boy Malik Rozier, who I was with this past weekend before the USF game. He held the record with 31 touchdowns in one season for Miami. Cam Ward is already halfway there pretty much, with more to go, on track to get 45. And then you talk about the completion percentage. It is night and day what he is doing. And I mean, De'Aaron King is probably a very guy that is very similar to, as far as in the last 10, 15 years, a guy that has done a lot for this football team on and off the football field, whether it's his leadership or play on the football field. De'Aaron King, Cam Ward definitely have some similarities, but when it's all said and done, Cam Ward is a guy that really changes the game, changes the aspect. And I'll tell you one thing. I asked your son to do this earlier, the Cam Selly. Cam Ward has taken over college football, whether you look at Hard Rock Bets. He's the Heisman favorite right now, right? You look at the stats. Him and Jackson Dart are pretty much 1A, 1B in pretty much every passing stat. But there's been a lot of celebrations in the past 4 weekends for the University of Miami, right? We did some things back in the day, bringing the turnover chain to celebratory for college football, and we changed the game. Of course, we're swag you, right? You have to be swag in order to be part of the University of Miami. And I tell you what, our guy Cam Ward has that swag and demeanor. And as great as the Cam Selly is, as great as the Xavier Restrepo after he scores a touchdown, and hey, you too short for me. even though I'm 5'8", you're too short
Still
for me.
Too small.
The best call-out celebration right now, I kid you not, I tweeted this during the game, is when you get to that line of scrimmage, in the goal line, especially being a Miami Hurricane fan, and you're talking about the trenches, you're talking about bully football. Within 1 or 2 yards, you know exactly what we're going to run, what play we're going to do. You know what Cam Ward does? He did the same thing he did in the swamp when we drained it. He went right up to that line of scrimmage, and he pointed. And he said, you know what? We're going to run the football right here, right there, and there ain't nothing you're going to do about it.
Shit you can do.
He did the Babe Ruth, the great Bambino. He called it out once again. And as great as the Cam Selly is, that right there made me laugh, and it just made me joyful that I was able to look around at that moment and stop before he snapped the ball and just look at these USF fans and go from this to this. Because that's exactly what happens when Cam Ward does that. What's your thoughts on Cam Ward so far this year?
Like I said, he is him. At first, I was like, nah, he's not calling shots. He's just basically setting up his protection because he's telling the defense. But no, it's confirmed. He's actually telling the defense, this is what we're gonna do. I like the confidence, but it's like a humility to his confidence, because he'll poke fun at the other team, but he understands as well as a leader, and he understands that he has to be the one to lead forward. And he's done it. Like, for example, the game against Florida, where he threw the interception, first thing he said, give me the iPad. Always with his wide receivers as well. Has great command of the huddle. Is with the other side of the ball as well. We saw him talking to Daryl Porter Jr. as well during the game. So that's something that says a lot about Cam. He's one of the best quarterbacks as far as leadership goes I've seen in a while. And we've had some good leadership, even though we've had some subpar teams. We've had some quarterbacks that could lead. Malik Rozier, you mentioned him, is one of them. I love Malik. He's been on my show before. He's a fantastic leader. But yeah, like, he's just on another level. Like, he's just on another level.
Yeah, no, man, I'm with you guys, and man, I love it because I remember the day I became a Miami fan. I wasn't as young as Brad because he had his dad taking him to games, but the day I became a Miami fan was the national championship game against Nebraska. And what drew me to Miami was that swag. And I grew up in Gainesville, but I just never liked the Gators. But what drew me to Miami was that swag that we played with, and that's what, like, I feel like we have again. But be Miami, it's not enough to just play. you got to have that swag with Miami. Like we're different. We stand out the turnover chain. You had everybody in the country coming up with all these other things after, those boys getting off the plane in the camo back in the day. Like we set trends, bro. And Cam Ward, I feel like brings that swag to Miami, and it gives me goosebumps talking about this man because I swear to God, like we've never had a quarterback like this who is the complete package. He has a feel for the game that is like just like I hate saying Mahomes, but it's like Mahomes, like for at least college. Like he has such a feel for the game, like where I'm never like when I watch Mahomes play, I'm never worried. You know what I mean? Like I know at worst, like he'll get us in position and chance to win the game. And that's what I feel like with Cam Ward. Not one time this year have I worried. And honestly, going forward, I'm not worried about anything, honestly.
Hit it on the head.
As long as Miami doesn't beat Miami, I think we're our biggest enemies.
Well, man, I appreciate you for hopping on and talking some Canes football with us, man. We're going to let you go here. Are you going to the game on Friday night? You packing the rock with us or what?
My friend, I can't. I can't. I'm busy. I'm busy on Friday. My wife is doing something, so I'm going to join her, like a family thing. But I'll definitely be watching the game at night for sure.
Absolutely, man. But before we let you go, man, go ahead and shout out your podcast and what you do, man. We want to make sure you get plugged in and make sure the Cane fans that are tuned in support you just like we do.
Thanks, Bradfield. Thank you so much for having me on. I had a great time talking Canes. It's always fun talking about Hurricanes football with you guys. And congratulations on the new show on FTSN. This show is fire, man. I really love listening to you guys. Here with you and Brett over at CanesWear as well. You can find me on YouTube, by the way, guys. Subscribe to my channel at 305 Sports Now. You can also find me on X at William Padron at 305 Sports Now as well. Gentlemen, thank you so much for having me on. I had a great time. Go Canes, and keep up the good work on your show.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it, Will, as always, man. Make sure y'all hit that like and subscribe button over on his channel, man. He does great work over there. His passion, love for Miami, man, and he brings great facts to the table, as y'all could hear, man. He's got a lot of great information for Miami Hurricanes football. Yeah, man, we got about, 15, 20 minutes left of the show. Any other Hurricane fans that are tuned in live, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. And if you want to hop on the show real quick, ask a question, give your 2 cents about this game, or leading into ACC play, which we'll talk more into about tomorrow's show, please, man, make sure you hit that StreamYard link, which FinTalk Sports Network has already dropped in the comments. We would love to have you on the show, man, not only on this show, but moving forward. We're going to be doing this all the time, daily, as much as possible, giving you the best information that you could get out there for Miami Hurricanes. If you didn't see my interviews with Wesley Bassaint's mom and sister, along with Jose Borregales and his dad, please make sure you go watch that. That was our last video we did during the game for Raymond James Stadium. Me and my boy, Bo, right here, will be at Virginia Tech. We will be having a live podcast with the fans at CanesWear store Friday leading up to the football game against Virginia Tech. So make sure you stay tuned for that. But yeah, man, any fans that want to hop in real quick and ask a question or drop anything in the comments, make sure you do so. Hit that like and subscribe button. But going back to our team, man. Just the accolades, right? Like, this is a team where I talked about, the goal line formation, the red zone, penalties. Besides, this past game, we were really good in the penalty, category besides the USF game. But penalties, red zone, causing turnovers, those are things that we've really been missing for Miami to be dominant.
Yeah.
But the other thing that really has haunted Miami is on offense is third down conversion. 10, 15 years. Doesn't matter who was that quarterback, who was that OC, who was that head coach. Third down conversions killed us. A lot of it had to do with the trenches and the offensive line just not getting that push. If you're on first down, you need to get at least 3, 4, 5 positive yards to be able to help that second and third down leading into that, right? We were never able to get that push. Third down, we were 7 of 9 with 61% through 4 games this year, which is one of the top third down conversions in the country. Actually, it's number 1 to be exact. We are number 1 program in college football on third downs on offense. Another huge stat for Miami that has really been missed for this football program, along with having the number 2 offense in the country, the number 2 passing quarterback in the country currently. And I don't know about you guys, but my boy Bo talked about it earlier. Anytime you talk about Cam Ward, you get goosebumps. Yeah. It's hard not to stumble on your words or almost want to hold off on expectations because you're not used to this. Because every time you talked about these type of expectations, it was fluff. There was no production to back it up. There was no turning on ESPN and every media guy is hyping up the same guy that you're hyping up, right? People were making fun of you in years past when you would hype up your favorite player on Miami. Well, guess what? Your favorite player's favorite player is on the opposite side of the team. They want the boys' autograph after the game's over because our guys that we are building at this program are that great. I mean, being able to, I mean, let's talk about it, right? You guys know how invested I am in recruiting. But when it comes to the freshmen right now for this football team, we had so many guys this past game with snaps. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, we had 13 freshmen and 7 redshirt freshmen. So a total of 20 overall freshmen, which was the most of any class this past weekend with total amount of snaps. So even though we won 50-15, and you bring up Cam Ward and X and Isaiah Horton and some of these great guys that, you know, came from other programs, we also had young guys that are continuously developing and proving who they need to be, and they're getting quality snaps. And not only is it helping the football team in the scoreboard, but it's also doing the due diligence from the recruiting aspect. It's going to be so much easier to have these recruiting pitches when they're able to see guys a year after them get quality snaps week in and week out, and they're winning football games, and we're still being dominant. There's no drop off, right? And that's what you love with this program. Give me one player on whether it's offense or defense, Bo, as a freshman, whether it's redshirt freshman or true freshman, that you've really been proud of.
Let me see.
I mean, I think Jordan Lyle is probably an easy one.
Yeah, Jordan.
I think Elijah Lofton is probably a surprise one because I think there was so much hype in the offseason where we expected so much from Elijah Lofton right off the jump. But again, going back to my point earlier, right? Miami has done a very good job at literally just giving whatever the defense gives them. And we've been so vanilla with our offensive play calling through 4 games that people don't realize, fans don't realize. There is so much we haven't shown yet. Elijah Lofton has barely been used, right? Damian Martinez has barely been relied to be that number 1 running back. Mark Fletcher has been non-existent the past, game and a half. It's because we don't need to use those guys right now. We are going into ACC play, and as we know, we need as much health as possible going into this because this is the most important stretch for this football team if we want to have the overall objective of getting into the playoffs. It starts this weekend against Virginia Tech. We're going up against a team Friday night in the Hard Rock Stadium. We got to make sure we pack the stadium, pack the Rock, wear all black, and this is a team that Cam Ward. This past weekend, there was a lot of meat left off the bone, especially in the first half.
Yeah.
Even though we played very good and we won 50-15, there was a lot of missed opportunities, whether it was Jacoby George's drop that led to interception, whether it was Isaiah Horton being missed wide open by Cam Ward. There was a few passes that Cam Ward usually makes that he didn't make in the first half, and thankfully we were able to recover and still be able to gain momentum and do what we do best. But we could have easily had 70 points this past weekend. And I think going into this weekend, anyone that follows Cam Ward and is big fans of Cam Ward like myself, you saw on the YouTube channels with him and Shador Sanders and his cousin Kyron Drones, who is the quarterback at Virginia Tech, he's been waiting for this game.
Mm-hmm.
This is a game where his trainer, one of his best friends, and his cousin Kyron Drones, this is personal for him. And coming off a game at South Florida where there was a lot of meat left off the bone and he knows he could have been playing better, I want to see if he gets out of his comfort zone and if he tries to do too much just because he's going against his cousin, or if he stays true to himself and he really just takes things to another level, understanding that this is the first ACC game and how important it is. Because I think not only Cam Ward, not only a lot of players on this offense and defense that you hear in interviews, but also Coach Cristobal, they understand how important ACC games are.
So I got a question for you. I know you mentioned like we've been very vanilla in our play calling and what we've been doing, which I feel the same way. So when do you expect us to start rolling out what we really are and start, full throttle, start going full throttle?
That's a great question. I'm going to answer your question and our guy producer Bobby Finn's talk behind the scenes. I'm going to answer both of y'all's questions. First, with your question, I think it's really a game-to-game basis. I think until we need to show our cards,
Mhm.
why show them? It's almost like being able to count cards when you're playing Texas Hold'em, right? I'm not going to show you my cards. I'm going to just coast. I'm going to hit cruise control, and I'm going to kind of wait behind the scenes, see how the game's being played, and dictate my move from there. And like I said before, that's exactly what this offense has been doing week in and week out based off the defense that they're playing. And as crazy as it sounds, every single week, not only Miami fans, but the media and opposing rivals, they're all hyping up Cam Ward.
Mm-hmm.
They're all hyping up the wide receivers. But yet, every single week, the game plan for the opposing defense is let Cam Ward throw the football. We're going to let you throw because we're going to make sure that the offensive line that you have built the last 2 to 3 years under Mario Cristobal and Alex Mirabal and Coach Pata, shout out to those boys. The offensive line you built in the running back committee that you have right now, we're more afraid of that. And you have seen that every single second half, the defense adjusts to how we play in the passing game to where that's when our running game starts to establish. That's when we start to break for those 30, 40, 50, 60-yard runs. And it's just all about adjustment. So until we get to an opponent that can stop just our plan like C, because that's the other thing, right? I mentioned this before. We haven't even got to plan A or plan B, right? We're on just the things that we're doing on a regular basis. We're able to surpass things through just the motions. And the longer we're able to do that, the more it's going to help us going forward to trying to get ACC championship, playoff bound. And then to Bobby Finn's point, what are some teams remaining on the schedule you feel could be a threat to Miami going undefeated? Me and Bo talked about this off air before we got onto the show. I went and dug deep into the stats of Cam Ward. For some reason, if there's an inconsistency of Cam Ward, whether it's passing yards, turnovers, or just completion percentage, when he's playing on the West Coast in California in particular, it is kind of shaky compared to others. He's definitely had some games where he showed out, but most of the times his worst games have actually been on the West Coast. So I'm interested to see. You saw today they brought out that it's going to be a 10:30 kickoff.
I was just about to say that.
10:30 kickoff, which is a very late kick. Coach Cristobal talked a little bit about on Joe Rose, WQAM 560. Shout out to those guys as well that do great work. He went on to the show this morning and kind of said they have been game planning. They have a strategy for these type of late kickoffs that they're very relied on, and they feel like statistically it works. So I think they're going to depend on that. So I'm comfortable with that. I think all in all, you got a guy in Cam Ward. You got a very good offensive scheme and weapons. And like I said before, I think they're going to be one-dimensional until they got to show their playbook. I think we still beat Cal. But if there is a team that I'm a little worried about, maybe it's Cal, maybe it's Syracuse last game of the year. But I mean, I booked my ACC hotel to Charlotte back in March, April, May, one of those 3 months. I could go back and pull the receipts or my emails, but I booked my hotel room that long ago. I was that confident in this football team. Just like I was very confident we were going to land Cam Ward. I stood on the stand on business hashtag, and y'all see, every single week how influential this guy is to this program.
Oh yeah.
Kane 1 is Coach Taylor, the official D-line coach. I've been noticing the last few games, Coach Sal hasn't been wearing the headset. I think with Coach Taylor, one of the things with him is he's very relatable with these players. He's a guy that, just 3-4 years from coaching at UM, he was coaching at St. Thomas Aquinas, where, OJ Romanes Frederick, Ryan Mack, Jordan Lyle, Chance Robinson, some of these guys that were very high on the next 3 to 4 years, that's where he coached at. So he's a guy that's very familiar with a lot of these guys. And I think when you're able to be relatable to these kids in this day and age and still have the background that you have of being a Hall of Famer at that position, it really helps impact these guys on and off the football field. And you saw it in kind of the teaser that Miami did on Twitter earlier today. They kind of showed you a behind-the-scenes video of after halftime, Jason Taylor got the whole defensive line group together and said, hey, man, I need a shutout in the third quarter. And they did just that, right? And that just goes to show you the overall depth and quality with this defensive line group. What's your thoughts on the D-line group, Bo?
I love the D-line group, but I love more of what I saw from Jason Taylor, to fire him sitting there yelling and showing that passion that he has. And if a Hall of Famer can't call you out, nobody can. You know what I mean? So I love that. I feel like you have to listen. Your ears have to perk up when Jason Taylor speaks. I think it's good for us as a university. I think it's great for our players because they know what to expect. And you're not just playing for this Saturday. You're listening to somebody that's going to help you make it to those Sundays, you know. So everything he says, you have to take it to heart. And if you're not, then, I mean, you do. What are you really doing? You know what I mean?
I couldn't agree more with you, man. We just hit the 50-minute mark, which is right about time where we wanted to wrap up. You just talk about what you're doing if you're not watching this Cane team. I don't know what else you're doing if you're not watching or tuned in to this CanesWear Daily Live podcast with my boy Bo and Brad, only on FTSN. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe button, and make sure you get all your Canes apparel at CanesWear 2655 University Drive in Davie, Florida. They have all the best apparel, whether it's Miami Hurricanes, Miami Dolphins, Florida Panthers, Inter Miami, whether you're, adults, kids, toddlers, infants, getting stuff for your car. They got it all. I can't wait till we're there on Friday. We're going to chop it up with a bunch of fans before the Virginia Tech game, and make sure you're tuned in because tomorrow we're going to be doing our annual Tuesday live podcast with me, Brett, and some of the fans like Cliff, Armando, and others. So make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. But hey, man, we had a great recap of this Miami South Florida game. We were able to talk to Will as well, who had a lot of great insight and input as well. Again, Cane fans, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. This is just the beginning for us, man. I can't wait. We're going to be having a lot of great content. I can't wait to pack the rock on Friday night in Miami. It's going to be a great one, man. But, Bo, I think we're out for tonight, man.
Yeah, well, actually, you know what? I wouldn't be me if I didn't go off about something that pissed me off.
Go ahead.
Real quick. And I don't get all these. I know you said I wasn't allowed to cuss. You know how hard that is for me. But I don't get all these crybaby ass USF fans. Before the game came up, you got on Twitter and started talking trash to us. You started talking crazy out your mouth. And then when we came in there and put belt the ass, all of a sudden y'all got an issue. Oh, y'all got no class. Oh, don't come talking shit to somebody. And then when they punch you in the face, you act like, well, where did that behavior come from? Y'all are the biggest crybaby fan base in the world. Take your ass whooping like a man and leave it alone. You knew you had no chance. You wanted to hype yourselves up, feel good. You had Miami come to your place. I'm sure you felt good until like the second half. But like, stop the crybaby shit on Twitter and all that dumb. Oh, the Miami fan base has no class. The U is the U. We gonna talk shit in your face. That's how we do. Yep. We've never been different. Win or lose, even in our worst years, we're still talking shit.
Listen, that's never gonna change.
Never gonna change.
And as scary as it is, man, we're just getting started. And
now we got a reason. Now you should
we got a big reason. And as y'all know, social media has taken over the storm, and y'all haven't even grasped the surface of this Miami Hurricane fan base because we are just getting started, just like this Miami football team.
Yes.
And as great as it was to be in Tampa this past weekend and watch Miami Hurricane fans third quarter, say nah, 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 hey, hey, hey. Goodbye to South Florida fans. Just like every single weekend, whether it's home or away, when that clock hits zero, it is nothing but Miami Hurricane fans chanting. We take over whether it's home or away. And there's a lot of trash talk and there's a lot of, subliminal tweets about how this fan base doesn't travel or doesn't hold their own. Well, I'll tell you one thing. So far this season, whether it's home or away, this team, this fan base takes over every single stadium. We drained the swamp. We sank the ship. I don't care about any other team on this schedule because as long as Miami continues to do what we do best, there's not a team in front of us that will overcome the Miami Hurricanes this football season. And as we know, it was never about who was on our schedule. It was always about, can Miami outbeat Miami?
Yes.
We always killed ourselves when it came to on and off the football field. The penalties, the third down conversions, not having the quarterback, not having the culture, not having the dominant players around you. Well, guess what, folks? We got all that. We got the recipe. We got the Kool-Aid. So go ahead and pour you something up, whether it's orange and green. At the end of the day, I need you to hit that like and subscribe button.
Please,
for the CanesWear Daily Live podcast only on FTSN. We are out. We'll see you tomorrow night.
Cam Ward for Heisman.
We out.